Scribble notes when I wrote these quotes. If I offend, pardon me, there's more of me to grow. Creative in my process, enjoy the show. The will is different when you recognize the different strokes. Different folks, same goals, we all want the most. So when we reach the top, we can enjoy the toast. The type of bread we get is fresh about the bakery. Told them don't play with me, with or without a degree. Don't question my intensity, bravery. Similar to agencies that want to see you fold. So just pray for me. Einstein with my energy.
Welcome to the Scribbled Notes Podcast. How are you doing? How is your life? How is your day?
Mine, it's great. I think I'm tired, but it comes from lots of hard work. So I think that kind of fuels me, that even when I am tired, that, we got it going on. We're making moves for the future, but so I'm pretty good.
Hey, I love to hear that. Why don't you introduce yourself for the listeners? Let them know who you are, how you got here, all that good stuff.
Okay. So I guess I'll just share before I introduce myself. We kind of connected via Instagram because podcasters kind of just have this way of finding each other. I don't know what it is. But my name is Erin. I am from the greater Hartford area. I have my own podcast called the WHYNOTU Podcast, and I have gone on to found my own community organization called the WHYNOTU Project, which is just a sub of my podcast to kind of put my views and thoughts into action and kind of give back to my community. I am an entrepreneur. I am in business, and that's kind of a little bit about me.
Yeah, so I've listened to a little bit of your podcast. So I know a little bit more background about you. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you got to this place for the listeners?
Cool. Yeah. So it's funny when I get asked this question, I feel like it's a very loaded question and I don't always know the answer. How I got here, I'm no different than anybody else. And I think that's the big thing that I try to preface here is, being an entrepreneur, you kind of have to hustle and go after what you want. But I think it was, going through all my struggles and facing adversity. Like I attempted suicide. I really had a hard childhood, teen years up until I was about 21. And all of a sudden I woke up one day and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I want to have a more positive life. So I guess that's kind of what fueled me and kind of made everything possible.
And getting into podcasting and pursuing these goals, where did that come from for you?
So I think basically facing all of this adversity, I realized, I was able to overcome it, which is just like the idea behind my podcast of like, why not you? Why can't you get the dream job? Why can't you do anything that you want to accomplish, regardless of resources, circumstances, etc. And I think because I had such hard circumstances, I was like, you know what, I'm going to use my voice to empower others that they can too do the same. Because like I said, I'm not different than anybody else. I didn't know anything more than anybody else. I just had an idea, like I want to talk to people, I want to serve people, and I want to help people. And what are the ways that I could do that? And so I kind of discovered podcasting and I was like, I see these other people have podcasts. Why can't I have a podcast? And then once I started doing it, I'm like, this is meant for me. And like, there's definitely hard days where I'm like, oh, like, is this going to work out? Everybody gets like that. But I think, what's kind of carried me through is like all the support from people who do listen. And yes, that's kind of how I got into it. I just like had this, it sounds very simple and not thought out. And that's exactly because it was not simple. Yeah. It was simple and it wasn't thought out. I just was like, okay, I have this idea. I Googled up, how do we start a podcast? How do I start talking to people? How do I do this? Okay, start a podcast. I started this podcast and I'm like, okay, I want to start a youth organization or a community organization rather. How do I do that? I started an organization really just by saying that I had one, creating all the graphics for it. And then I started pitching myself to local companies like the Boys and Girls Club and local non-for-profits. And I started getting yeses from people. And you're going to get so many no's before you get a yes, but it's kind of just being persistent. And I think like that's the biggest thing, is being persistent is what got me here, is like not taking the no's for no and wanting to turn them into yeses. And that kind of, I guess, drove me. Once I heard a yes, I was like, okay, I want to hear 20 more yeses. And that's kind of how I got here, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful point though. Like persistence does pay off, and it is the dual sides, right? Like you do get a lot of no's. You get a lot of people who just don't support it. And when you stick it out and you make it through, it does feel amazing.
Yeah. And never mind, I mean, the amount of no's that I've gotten, I mean, not to say I've gotten very few, but I've gotten a lot of people who don't even answer me. And like, that's pretty degrading that you just pitched yourself to somebody and was like, listen, this is what I want to do. Do you like my idea? You don't even get a freaking response back. Like that sucks. But like so many people, what people don't talk about is, on social media and through things, we only see the successes, right? Like you see like, oh my gosh, how does this girl get these guests on her podcast? How I reached out to 20 people and one person said yes.
Absolutely.
Like that's the thing that people see, like super big founders of super big companies. All these investors probably didn't invest in their company for 3, 4, 5 years. You know what I mean? I think my biggest thing, and I want anybody listening to this to know this, is Jeff Bezos worked at McDonald's when he was 23. And he like runs one of the biggest companies in the world. Like, you know what I mean? Like so many people don't start off as like super like I didn't just come out of the womb as a successful entrepreneur. Like it didn't work like that. It took a lot of no's and a lot of like, we're not seeing the dollar sign. How do we monetize this? Like, I think like, being able to run with the no's and being like, okay, instead of using it, and this is like the whole idea behind my podcast, like why not you? I want people to turn their why me's into a why not me. Is like, okay, I'm going to take that no, and instead of being hurt by the no, I'm going to turn it into a yes. And then you're going to see me and that yes person out networking, doing business. You're going to see me at the top of a company. You're going to see me running my own business. You're going to be like, damn, I wish I said yes. And that's kind of like, I guess what fuels me is I'm like, you're not going to say yes right now, but you're going to be saying, oh shit, in like 4 years once you see me doing well. And so I think that's kind of like the secret sauce to it all, is like how to get started is just get started. Like you don't need a big idea. You literally don't need any money. Like you just need your thoughts. Like, okay, I'm going to execute this. Like you don't have to have a whole business plan written out to be able to make something successful. I mean, most of big companies, whether it be companies, products, podcasts, celebrities, they all start off on accident. It just doesn't look on accident,
Yeah. I completely understand what you're saying. I think I've talked to a lot of creative people, and a lot of times and oftentimes they do just stumble into the thing that they're doing. And then when they start seeing more and more success, they start to become super engaged and more serious. And then they start to hone the craft that much further. And it's always incredible to watch. Right. But for a lot of people, they don't see the behind the scenes. Like recently I had a pretty big guest on my podcast, and folks just never knew. I had a lot of people hit me up afterwards, like, how did you get connected and how did this all happen? How did that come to fruition? And I had to like tell them that took 6 months. Like that wasn't just overnight. Like this is effort, this is time, this is ambition.
Right. And I think I compare it a lot of the times is it almost in a way is like the gym, right? For people, like you go to the gym, you're not going to wake up and have abs, right? Like, but to the outside world, nobody's following your stuff. And all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, Erin lost 40 pounds. How the hell did she do it? And it's like, well, I have been in the gym, not seeing any results for months until all of a sudden one person is like, oh my God, you're in shape. Like, it's really like you have, like, and those kind of things, it's hard, especially like that's the whole entrepreneurial mindset is like, how are you supposed to keep pushing when maybe you're not getting the views, you're not getting the likes, you're not getting the follows? It's funny. I always say, like I don't have a super big following on Instagram. I have like maybe 1,300 people. My following literally doesn't mean shit. It just means who's engaging with my stuff. And, I have this, 1,300 followers, and my first podcast episode had 10,000 views. So like, it really doesn't equate. I mean, and it's funny, every time I post something where I feel like I look really successful, like I post something from a conference, I lose followers. I'm like, how does that work? I just posted something super awesome and you all unfollowed me. But like, it's just kind of like the, when you feel like you're not seeing what society makes it look like is like, I mean, what do we deem success anyway? And success definitely isn't money. And I think for so long and so many people are like, okay, are you successful? How much money do you make? And I think it's like kind of chasing your passion, like the money will come. And that's something that like I kind of had to run with lately is like, I've been working a lot of these other jobs like that are not related to my career, my field, or my podcast or what I want to do. And I'm like, to work in in the field, I might have to take a pretty serious pay cut, but I'm ready for it to be able to invest in a lifetime of success. And I think so many people, whether it be like becoming an influencer, becoming a podcaster, becoming an entrepreneur, like they're like, what about the money? And it's like, well, if you're doing anything for money, you're in it for the wrong reasons.
Yep.
And, you know, a lot of these multimillionaire CEOs, you know, like influencer podcasters, whatever, they all start off with no money and actually in a serious amount of debt. And eventually their idea becomes big because they run with what they love. It's sustainable. And that's how they make their money. And, you know, good things don't happen overnight. And that's what I always tell people when getting started, whether it be in the podcast world, in the social media world, whatever career you're in. If you're in a creative space, like in an entrepreneur, like a business or marketing or all these things, like you're going to have to hustle. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to take pay cuts. Like, you know, you're going to have to do things that you don't really want to do to get you where you want to be. But I think the end all be all is that in 20 years, you're going to create a life for yourself that you absolutely love living. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm starting to see the turnaround of like, holy crap, like, is this really my life? Like I get to do what I like all the time. And so I think that's like my biggest advice to anybody starting out is like literally just start, because the sooner the sooner you start, the less that you're pushing off what you don't want, you know, what you don't want to do.
Yeah. And having patience is so important. Like nothing great happens overnight. And if it does, then it probably wasn't worth it. So it's just like understanding that you have to have patience, you have to grow, you have to be willing to wait, you have to be willing to make some sacrifices, because you're not going to get all the success at once. You're not going to always see the returns of all of your efforts right away. So sometimes you have to really just hamper down and just put the work in. I remember when I was writing, I published my second book, I think last year in October. And for the longest time, like didn't see any real success, didn't feel like it was a super success until recently I won an award for it. And I was like, wow, I just like this book really was that good. Like it was good enough to win 3 awards. And I was like, that was awesome. That was a great moment. But it was just a testament to putting in time, putting in effort.
Right.
And then you don't necessarily see like bestseller status right away. You might have to wait. And being willing to wait, being willing to accept that your wait is important, especially as you're building a business, especially as you're building a company, as you're building a brand, you're building something that you want to sustain over time. You have to be willing to have some patience.
Yeah. And I think also it's kind of taking the leap of faith to do something that's different. It's like, you know, in school, like we're not always taught like you can be an entrepreneur. I was never freaking taught that I should have multiple streams of income. I didn't know that I should have multiple streams of income until like this year. And I was like, holy shit, like I'm not going to be a millionaire if I don't have 7 streams of income. Like, you know, like these are things that like people really don't teach you. And I think, you know, it's kind of like you have to take a leap of faith. You have to jump outside of your comfort zone. Like maybe, you know, I had to leave a job that I was tied to the money. The money was great, but you know, my passion wasn't there and I couldn't stay in it any longer. And is it scary? Of course it's scary to let go, because everybody needs to live. Everybody needs to have money. You know, you all need to pay rent. But at the same time, it's like, how do you take that leap of faith? How do you do? I literally, like, my best advice is just do it. Even if you don't see it overnight, all of a sudden, I always say like the biggest breakthroughs come from when you're breaking down, and when you're breaking down, you're really just breaking open. And like, it's funny, like the other night I was like to my mom, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Being an entrepreneur is so hard. And, you know, like you, as an entrepreneur, you see very, very highs and super duper lows. And I was like a mess. And I'm like, what do I do? And then the next day I get offered like 6 insane career opportunities that I'm like, how the heck did I not see this coming? And I'm like, you know what? The universe kind of aligns things for you when you take a leap of faith. And I always say, you know, if you don't remove something from your life, the universe will remove it for you, but in very inconvenient timing. So you're really just better off doing it yourself. Like once you get that gut feeling, like, oh crap, maybe this isn't for me anymore. Think about it, sit with it for a little bit, and then just make the leap of faith. People stay in relationships, in jobs, in friendships for far too long than they should. And it really only wastes your goddamn time. So I think like you kind of said, like, you know, you didn't see revenue right away from your book, but it came and you really didn't even know when it was coming. So I think like it's kind of like starting the idea, running with the idea, and just being patient and persistent. And like that's something I've always struggled with, is the whole patience aspect. Like that is not me. Like I had to completely rewrite that. I like everything to be done ASAP. Like you want to hire me tomorrow. You want to be my friend. Let's get drinks now. Like I don't want to have to wait for things, you know? So I think that was like my biggest like thing, is like learning the patience is like, it's literally a necessity.
No, I definitely feel that. I want to know what happens when people say no for you. What do you do? How do you respond when folks say no, turn you away, when you're getting that negative energy?
Yeah, I think my biggest push is kind of like, okay, and I'm going to prove you wrong. And I think, you know, you still have to be professional. You still have to be respectful, because you never know who you're going to run into in your future. And instead of like, you know, giving an attitude or being rude about things, I kind of am just like, you know what? Okay, thank you so much for your time, but I'm going to prove you wrong. I'll see you in a few years. I mean, I don't say all of that. I'm like, you know what? Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the consideration, whatever it is. And then I wait. And it's funny because I've even seen a couple month turnaround where people have told me things like, oh, you think that could benefit you? Or you really think that that's a good idea? You know, people challenge your thoughts. And I'm like, I remember when people said those things to me and I was like kind of insulted. Like, what? Do you think that I can't do it? And, you know, I mean, sometimes everybody gets like that. I'm like, wait, can I do it? You question yourself. And I think, you know, eventually I got to a point where I received so many no's that I was like, I actually don't care that you're telling me no. That's fine, because there is somebody so much more amazing who's going to tell me yes. And I think it's kind of just like shifting and reframing the mindset of like, I could look at it this way, glass half empty, like, damn, I got to know, that sucks. I was looking forward to this. I mean, I've been told no by people who I just wanted nothing more for them to say yes. And once I got comfortable with being told no, I was really just like, your loss. Like, it's like, I had this whole thing. I'm like, it's the your loss mentality of like not being cocky about it, but being like, I know what value I bring to the table, and I'm going to run with that. So I think no's I don't even sweat them anymore. And it definitely took a lot of patience and a lot of hard work to be there, you know, to not feel like hurt by a no. And I mean, sometimes even now when people say no and they say something rude, we're all human beings. It's like, damn, that sucks. But I give myself an hour. I'm like, you can feel like shit for an hour and then you go back exactly to what you were doing, but you network with 10 more people and maybe you get 9 no's, but you get 1 yes. And I think it's like the more yeses you get and the more you kind of start moving and shaking, like you'll start to get the yeses, I promise. Like it just takes a lot of persistence.
Yeah, it for me, it's always been like, you have to be willing to take the risk. You have to be willing to be told no. Like, just accept that that's coming. Like, that's going to happen. That comes with the territory of anything you're doing. There's going to be people who don't believe in you. There's going to be people who don't support you. There's going to be opportunities that just aren't for you. And sometimes it's better that you don't get those things or don't work with those people anyway. So like, I've always been of the mindset that it's going to happen. Things will happen for a reason. Ultimately, you will get what you need. It just might not be the right person or the right time for that person. So you also talk a lot about mindset on your podcast. When I'm tuned in, I'm listening, and you talked a lot about mindset. I think your most recent episode, feeling your feelings and like making sure that like folks really do and like take time to feel what they're actually going through. Can you talk a little bit about that? How do you come up with your topics? How do you frame some of this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is what I personally go through. So, you know, it's like, okay, what do I feel like I need to hear this week? Or what do I feel like I needed to hear 5 years ago when I was struggling and nobody told me? And I think like oftentimes I get a feeling and I'm like, oh, I've been feeling lately, like I'm not feeling my feelings. You know what? I'm going to inspire others to feel their feelings, and in turn it inspires me. And I think that's why I love what I do so much, is that in helping other people, I help myself. And, you know, like we're always our worst critics. Like we could give the best dating advice in the world, but we could have absolutely the worst relationship ever. And I think that, you know, being able to like inspire other people and like kind of like, you know, it's funny, every time I record an episode, I listen to it back. And not for editing purposes, like screw the editing purposes. I listen to it back to hear myself talk and execute that on my own life. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, I mean, it's kind of half and half. Sometimes it's what I really feel like I need to hear. And so I'm always great at giving other people advice. And so in turn, I take my advice and I give to other people and I use it on myself. And then sometimes it's the opposite way where I'm like, you know what, I really went through this. I struggled really hard. And this is how I'm going to be able to help other people. So that's kind of like a mix of the topics. It's either what I'm currently going through, what I went through, and I kind of had a reflection point, or like, holy crap, I just discovered this new idea and this is how I think people should view things. And I want to share that with you, whether it's me interviewing somebody or talking with another person. Like, I guess that's my ideas kind of just come to me. It's really not like, I don't sit down with a clipboard and be like, what's the next 20 episodes? Like it kind of just goes week to week. And I really like it that way.
Yeah, I think that's such a cool style because it is more like, it's more relevant and pertinent to yourself. But I also think as human beings, I've noticed we have a shared experience out here. We're all kind of going through similar things or the same things. Something I like to do on Instagram, I do a bunch of reels and I talk into the microphone and just like let people know whatever's on my mind, whatever I'm feeling. And sometimes it's like just raw emotion, just a minute of this is what's going on with me. And a lot of times it is because I need to hear it, because I need to work this through for myself. And it's not necessarily always for everyone else. But I've noticed that it resonates with a lot of people, that sometimes the message that you're saying does matter and it really does impact folks. So I definitely understand that. And podcasting is just one of those spaces where you get the 15, 20 minutes of just raw conversation. You get the stream of consciousness of just being able to just share, which is really awesome.
Yeah, and I think I try to be as open and real and raw on socials as humanly possible. And I think like, you know, for so long, I felt the need to hide that from people, that I always had to be okay. I wasn't allowed to feel my feelings. I know I talked about in that episode, it's like, you know, we have this idea of society that we need to just be fine. Like, I'm good. I'm fine. How are you doing? I'm great. I'm fine. I'm good. And when you're not good, and it's okay to not be good. And it's okay to say that you're not good. Like, you know, I think there's this like false conception that like, if you're not good, like it makes you look bad. Like, because everybody else, we're all just lying to each other. And I think that's why like on my podcast, I try to be real. And it's like, I want it to be a safe space where it's like, yeah, even Erin feels this way. So it's okay that I feel this way. And I wish I had the reassurance 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, when I was going through really hard shit, for somebody to tell me that, like, what I was feeling was okay. And I didn't have to feel any other way than what I was feeling. So that's kind of where, like, I guess the passion and like where my ideas come from is like, what did I need to know? What did I need to hear, you know? And I wanted to be a safe, like, incubated space where it's like we can all just feel how we feel. Like it's okay to cry to the podcast. It's okay to like all of a sudden, like sometimes I listen like, or I'll read a book and I read things and I'm like, crap, like I need a debrief after listening to that or reading that. That just woke me up. And so that's like kind of my purpose behind it, I guess.
Yeah. I'll honestly think just feeling your feelings is so important. Like taking it in, taking the moment. Like if you're upset, just let that energy be that energy. Don't suppress it because of whatever reason. You can be upset. You can cry. Like I've cried so many times this like month just with random things that go on. I'm so glad
you admitted that. Yeah.
I've cried in the car. Like I've literally sat like driving somewhere and cried just because like just was feeling like I needed to get some tears out. I'm also very like, sometimes I'm very strange. So I was watching Survivor, love Survivor. One of my favorite shows. One of my favorite shows. They have the final tribal where they give their speech. I've been practicing my final tribal speech for so long that like I can make myself cry.
Go on the show.
Yeah.
You should go on.
One day I'm like ready to apply. Like it's gonna happen. But it just like for me, just being able to feel your emotions is something that for the longest time, just being a male, I was just avoiding. I wouldn't let people know when I was upset. I really wouldn't tell people how I felt about situations, about them. I wasn't expressive, and I didn't see the benefit long term from that. I saw myself becoming more just removed, I'd say. And as I've come into adulthood and started to do new things, especially in the work environment, it's definitely changed the way I communicate with folks, the way I feel like I can talk to people and connect with others. Just being able to accept that you don't have to always be happy. And for me, happiness was always a coping mechanism. It was always the go-to. Let me just put a smile on and be the cheerful person, even when I wasn't. And I think just learning how to feel everything else made such a big difference in my own life, because now when I'm happy, I can genuinely be happy. I don't have anything that I'm hiding or suppressing.
Hiding. Exactly. That's kind of the whole idea behind everything that I do. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I think more people really need to tap into feeling how they feel, because it's going to be transient in every aspect of your life. So I think the more that you feel things, the more that, you're better for every aspect, career-wise, personal life-wise, everything,
So, I wanted to say, because you're very open and honest in your podcast. Where does that rawness come from? Why do you choose that as the method, I'd say? Because I know some people who would be like, I'm going to be a bit more reserved, or I'm not going to share everything about myself.
I always say that I am an open book, and I want people to accept me really for who I am. And if they don't, I actually don't care at all. And I think like growing up, like, I went through some really crappy stuff in high school. I was assaulted. Like I felt like I had to keep my mouth shut all the time. Like I couldn't voice my opinions. I didn't want people to know what I thought or what I said. My parents always told me to like ride the wave, like don't make any riffs. And I think now I know that I'm smart, I'm empowering, I am all of these things, and people deserve to know exactly who I am and what I've been through, and that, then they can relate to these things. I mean, it kind of goes back to everything that we've talked about, that, this is who I am, and you can take it or you can leave it. And, I feel like so many of us live in like this closeted version of ourselves, and, we can't be open with people. And, if I want to have a genuine following, I want people to know me for me. I don't want you to know me for internet Erin. There is no internet Erin. I'm the same exact person that I am on my podcast, on my social media, that I am in real life. And I try to be as genuine and real as possible, because it's relatable and it's real and it's raw, and that's who I am. I don't need to create some fancy business mock write-up of, like almost like rewriting a character for ourselves. Like, this is me, this is who I am, and this is how it's going to be. And I don't know, I kind of ran with that idea. And like, the genuality behind things just comes from the struggle. And now that I don't have to deal with that anymore and I can inspire others, I think, my story really says a lot about who I am and how everybody else can be, real and raw and true. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing.
Yes. Honestly, it resonated with me. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, obviously, just being in the space and connected with a lot of people. But like just being so open and honest, and being so clear, for me, that was just like that was what impressed me the most about just what you're doing. And it made me like tune in, like, all right, let me make sure I'm connected and looped in now, because just hearing about it just, I don't know. For me, like knowing that there's people who make personas and people who aren't necessarily their same selves in different environments, just I felt like it was just you, when I had never even met you before. So I was like, I gotta connect. So
yeah, no, we got to do this.
Yeah, like it's crazy. So I wanted to ask you, what's next on your plate of things to do? What are you looking forward to?
Oh, man, that's a very hard thing to ask. What is next? I mean, there's so many things that come next. I have so many ideas. I want to gatekeep some of my business ideas. Whoever listens to this doesn't know my next 10 years, but I mean, kind of the next steps for me is kind of like branching out, I guess. Like, I really want to run with this podcast. I'm really making a career shift so that I can be more incubated in the space of entrepreneur and business world. So that's kind of what's next for me. I really want to create like an online community where people can kind of sign up and we can do like weekly check-ins, weekly calls, kind of like my little niche of people. And like, I'll kind of facilitate this group in like a life coach setting, and kind of get people rolling, give people activities, access to different things they can do to kind of get to where I am and give them the support that they need, not at a very expensive healthcare cost like therapy every single week. So that's kind of like my next steps, I would think, is like I'm going to create this online platform to kind of get people together. So if I could do it in real life and I could do it on my podcast, I really want to personalize down like a community of people.
Yeah, that's such an awesome, just such an awesome plan. I think connecting with people is just it's the work that I do, and it's just the best kind of work, helping other people develop and grow and become the person that they don't even know they can be.
And I'm in the process. Yeah. No, totally. And I'm in the process of writing a book, so maybe we'll have some similar things to talk about.
Okay.
So it'll probably be a little bit because I'm just so insanely busy, but I have the ideas, the groundwork is there. It's just about getting it executed into an actual book. So we'll see, but I'm in the process.
No, that's awesome. I love writing. And you just tell me when that happens. I will definitely be tuned in. Where can people connect with you? Where can people find you?
Yeah. Okay. So I have multiple Instagram accounts. So my podcast has an Instagram. My what's it called? My youth community organization, rather, that also has an Instagram. You also all can check it out. It's all linked in my personal Instagram bio. It's its Erin and then Catherine with 3 E's, which is my middle name. I kind of ran with it. I liked it. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Erin Mairson on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's the coolest thing ever. You can email me. My phone number's in my bio. Like, text me, call me, just say who you are. We can set some time up to talk.
Awesome. So one final piece of advice for listeners and people who are going through their journey. Do you got something for them?
Yeah. I would say don't take no for an answer. Don't. Block out. I think the biggest thing, block out the background noise. Everybody else is static. Okay? Like, take your ideas, run with their ideas. Just don't take no. Block out the background noise and keep going, keep pushing, keep pursuing. And I promise it'll work out 10 times better than you thought it would.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, more than you know. We could totally do this again. Check in, talk. I'm going to read your book.
Thank you.
Yeah. So awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yes. And listeners, you know what to do. Like the video, subscribe, rate the episode on Spotify. Y'all know how it is.
And follow us on Instagram.
True. Follow Instagram. Links in bio. Peace out.
Scribble notes when I wrote these quotes. If I offend, pardon me, there's more of me to grow. Creative in my process, enjoy the show. The will is different when you recognize the different strokes. Different folks, same goals, we all want the most. So when we reach the top, we can enjoy the toast. The type of bread we get is fresh about the bakery. Told them don't play with me, with or without a degree. Don't question my intensity, bravery. Similar to agencies that want to see you fold. So just pray for me. Einstein with my